Video today is going to be very basic. It's about making a web page, using an editor, and showing you how a web server can toss that page or serve that page for us. And we'll look at setting the path environment variable and just a few simple things like this. Even ports on a web server, how different websites or pages can be at different ports bound. So if you know these things, probably not for you. You can move on. Might get into downloading node.js and getting that installed, and just a little intro to JavaScript, but mainly a little setup for pretty much beginners. So what I'm going to do, let me shrink myself before I forget, get out of the way. I'm going to drop the command prompt. I'm going to type cmd, and you'll see that there it is, and I can hit enter, and it pops up a command window here. And I'm going to use cd \. That'll take me to the root, the base of C drive. And for our purposes today, I'm going to make a directory called demo. And then I'm going to change down into that directory, cd demo. And if I take a dir directory, dot, and dot, it's my parent path, my current path, no files yet. So one way to create a file is simply to use Notepad in Windows. So I'll take Notepad. It happens to be in our path, so it knows where it's at, and we'll show you that in a second. But I'm just going to call it index.html, making a new web file. It comes up, and it's letting you know, hey, you're creating a new file. That doesn't exist. Yes, I want to create that. And with HTML, you probably already know there's proper tags and things, and this is still not proper, but I'll fake it like I've at least got an intro and exit tag there, end tag. And I'll use an H1 just to make it appear bigger, /H1, and I'll put my page. I'm going to hit Alt File Save, Alt FS, or of course File Save. Now if you don't know about web servers, or you've not been really using one yet, what you've probably been doing is using something like Chrome. You can see me down there hitting Chrome, the icon, or Internet Explorer, or Edge. And in Chrome, this notation is a little different in Internet Explorer, and there's a way in the menus to go browse to a file, but in Chrome I can type file // and you can see I had already done this once before, demo index.html. I go to that file on my hard drive, in there, bam, I'm looking at a web page I've made. Now what's different about this is almost like a piece of paper. Not much to it. It's there, it's static. The beauty with the web server is it's like putting a bunch of gears on the back end. When you call that web server and it's sending you the page, the beauty is it can do many other things. It can call other processes, programs, build dynamically, and give you back that page. Big difference. That's what a web application is all about, is you call the web server and it can call other things and give you back a page. Pretty odd nowadays, as I'm thinking about it. It's changed a little where even your client browser is calling different things and kind of assembling the page. So I guess that's a big thing. You're going to be hearing things about single page applications and SPAs, and they're kind of making mini calls, and the client is kind of putting them together. And the older style, MVC or web form, or just rendering a whole page, is really just building all at once and bringing it back. So kind of an interesting thing as I think about it, the way they're different. So let's look at this from a web server now, not just grab it off my hard drive. And in our example, we're going to use our own computer as our web server. Don't have to have one out here. We can run both programs on our machine, our browser and our fake web server here. So it turns out with Windows, there's a big IIS comes. We can install the components. We're not going to do that today, but we will, I'm sure, show you in another video where you go into adding features and components and picking IIS, and whammo, you have a full throttle IIS web server running on your Windows machine. But for our purpose, we're just going to use a dummied down IIS Express. Now I know it's on my machine. You might have to install something else to get it. Like I think I've installed Visual Studio. When you install even the community edition of Visual Studio, you would have it for sure. We could mention that now. I had not planned that, but if you did not know that, Visual Studio is a nice program from Microsoft, and there is a community free edition. And I think if there's less than 5 developers at a place or a thing, you can use it for free and things. But if you downloaded that, and let's just do that here in Chrome. I'm going to say like download Visual Studio Community. There it is. And you could go find that for Windows. And I'm confident if you installed that, you would have IS Express for sure. So that solves one gap in my video. For sure, if you get the community edition for free, you will have IS Express installed on the machine. Well, when I go to run IS Express, though, here's another lesson today. I type IS Express, and there's no space in the actual executable name. That's the program that runs on Windows, an exe. But hey, it's giving me an error. Not recognized. Well, it's not in my path. Like Notepad, recall, was in my path. Well, we can fix this. And if you did not know this, there are many ways to do it. There's a path environment variable on your Windows machine. And a lot of times I'll just start to type my computer or computer, and this PC comes up. Again, you can find this in quite a few different things, but one way is this PC properties, and there's like advanced system settings. Advanced system settings, and down at the bottom is environment variables. Now, this has been there for over 20 years in Windows. This is pretty much the same way of getting there, but when I go to environment variables, one of them in the bottom section, notice top's user, this is the whole machine system. There's one called path. That's very special. When you run commands at the command prompt, it looks in all these paths to find that executable in the order. So if you find yourself doing something or using a program a lot, you might add it to your path to make it more convenient. So when I hit path and edit, it shows me all these things in my path. A lot of times you'll install programs, bam, they'll add themselves to the path to make it easier. But here I want to add a new thing, and I know, because I've already looked, that this program is in C program space files, and the path is IS space express. And that's where the executable is. So I hit OK, I hit OK, I hit OK, I'll kill this. Now here's something interesting. Got this window up. I'm going to hit my up arrow for the last command I used, IS Express. It's in my path, right? Enter, same error. Lesson number 1, or lesson 452, you have to close your window and reopen to get that new path variable. Just something you learn with hard knocks, right? And now if I type IS Express, all one word, it's in my path. And if you can see that, it's telling me, hey, there's web server run here, localhost on port 8080. So when you go HTTP, of course that's Hypertext Transfer Protocol, a protocol to get to this web server, and the colon says what port. Usually it's default port 80, and you don't even have to type anything. You type HTTP whatever server, bam, it goes to the default port 80. But here it's saying, no, I'm running on 8080, so it takes that colon. So let's look at this. Now, instead of getting my web page, actually, I've not set it up yet. Watch what happens. When I go to that address that it's telling me, HTTP localhost 8080, I do have a web server running, and you saw it had a get command come. Out of the box, it's serving stuff. But I really want it to serve my page. So I'll hit quit here. And now that it's in my path, I can do something as simple as IS Express, but I'm going to type the path argument or parameter and tell it what folder I want to serve the website from. Now, I know at first, the beginner, these parameters and dashes and everything, it seems so confusing, but you'll get used to it. You might be spoiled with GUIs, especially with Windows programming, but over time, you'll see more and more all those GUIs are doing is calling these commands, and it seems we're making a move in the recent years with some of the newer languages to doing more and more and more at the command prompt, and you'll start loving that power. But usually you can do like a /help or a /? Let me do that. That one worked on this one, IS Express. I think I can do, a lot of times it'll be like a -h, but usually with these commands, there's some way to get a help file and help you understand. Now I happen to know, and it's even showing us an example there, two of the most common ones on this one are what path and even what port you want to use. So I'm going to say IS Express, and I'm going to tell it /path:, and remember that was demo. I believe that's it right there, right in the demo. And we'll take that for now. Boom! It's saying, hey, I'm running. And let's see if it works now. Let's go and refresh our page. Bam! We're getting our page now. What's the difference? From a web server, not from the file. Let's try something else just out of orness. And, well, first of all, if it's not there, what should happen now? Well, it should be dead, right? Web server's not even running. It's a looking, but can't do it. And, of course, if I run it, but I say port like 1337, let me run that. Of course, now will be the exact same response, but if I, with the same port, but if I change it to the new right port, it finds my page at that port. So you can see how I could have two programs running, one on different ports or websites, and you'll be doing that a lot with programming. So let's think where we're at now. We've showed you the path, we've showed you a cheesy web server tossing at a port. Let's move on to a little bit of JavaScript. As you start programming, making more than just a web page, there's HTML, there's CSS for styling, but as we start progressing into programming, you might start tinkering with JavaScript. And matter of fact, let's do this. As we start our programming, let's get Visual Studio Code. Now with Community Visual Studio, you could use that. Both of these are great programs, absolutely great. Either one's going to work, but you might end up using VS Code. So let me just quickly show you again. Download VS Code. VS Code, and you'll find a page and a download. And this is almost, again, we could use the word dummied down Visual Studio, or this is just the bare bones, all you need, very nice. And it seems a lot of people are moving to just using this instead of the full-blown Visual Studio. But once you install that and run it, of course it would be in your menus probably somewhere, Visual Studio Code. But you're going to get used to just the code command. Watch this. Let me go ahead and break this for now. I'm stopping my IS Express, and let me get to that folder I want to be in. I want to be in my demo folder. Once I'm in that folder, I can actually type code, and I'm just going to use dot. This is saying, hey, run Visual Studio Code. So you need to know code is the program name to fire up Visual Studio Code and say, hey, look at my current directory. Now watch this. Visual Studio Code comes up, and there you have your web page in an editor. So lesson 2, or whatever it is of our thing, is using Visual Studio Code to edit your web pages if you haven't been. One bummer is I can't zoom. I wish they had the zoom. Maybe there's a shortcut, but you can go into edit or something in preferences and jack your font up. But Notepad, that's one advantage of Notepad, is the simple zoom scrolling the mouse. But here we are. Let's add a script section now. We were starting to talk about scripts. And so I'm going to add a tag called a script tag. And we could add a language and things here, but it should default to know I want to use JavaScript. And this is something you do not want to do normally in a real program. You don't want to use alerts. These were made for debugging and things. You'll see programs as you start working that have confirms and alerts. Those were never meant to be used in production code. So try to avoid those, and we'll show you more mature ways of popping dialogues and things. But for testing purposes, I could say I ran JavaScript. Okay, I'm going to hit File Save. And I'm going to do another CMD here. And I could have just went to the one that was already there probably. But if I go, well, don't need to go anywhere because I'm going to do IS Express. I'm going to go ahead and just use IS Express to show my page. And I'm going to say that path, let's see, was it /path : demo. Now, I think if you loaded this with file, you might get an error warning and you have to say yes, run scripts, but it would work, I believe, even locally. But we should not even get those prompts since we're running this from a web server. So now that that's supposedly running, let's get our web browser up here, Chrome. We'll bring Chrome over here and let's try our local host, port 8080. I took the default. Look at that. If you can see that, it's popped up there and it has gave me a thing popping up that says, hey, I ran JavaScript. That is JavaScript popping a message up. So congratulations, you're now certified at JavaScript. Nah, but you're starting to program. Now what's neat is as you start learning input things, like I could put div ID equals my spot. And this is old school, but still used in certain places. But I now have a div on my HTML page where I can access it, get a hold of it with programming. And so what I might do, let's get a little wild now. I'm going to comment that out. I'm going to make a function called tell me or something like that. And then when you click tell me, I want it to say document.getElement by ID, my spot, and I'll just use the inner HTML is like, hi mom, I am here. Let's see if that works. Now, well, it's not going to run. Let's go and refresh it. Why didn't that work? Well, it's a function that I have to call. I don't have a button or anything firing that code. So one way would be to have a button on my page and say when I click that, boy, if you could type, I would say tell me or something, whatever I had there. Tell me. I hit this. Oh, I have a button. I forgot one thing. It'd sure be nice if that had, say, something to make it a little simpler. I click it, and it does not work. Well, this brings in another thing. If you did not know this, there are developer tools in browsers. And usually it's F12. And here it's tell me is not a function. Look at this. I believe what my problem is here, let me back this up, is instead of it being a function, I can say inner HTML equals, like it's a property. And let's try it again. I'm going to hit refresh. I hit F5 for refresh. Go, bam, look at that. Let me hide my developer tools. Actually, we'll leave it for a second because there's a lot there if you didn't know this. We used JavaScript to actually change the page by going go. And you know, we could do math here. We could put 2 input boxes and literally be programming a kid math thing or something that quick. So that's baby programming, put a start. While we're here, let's mention these developer tools that it even has network calls. So like if I hit refresh here, it shows you where it's making the call from. And it's showing you what's called headers and responses and things of that nature. So there's a lot of power here. Well, we could talk all day, but these are the building blocks. The next thing I want you to know, because we're going to go this direction, is that node.js lets you run JavaScript not just in the browser, like we're running scripts here. It lets you run it at a command prompt. And so that's a pretty popular program. And let me just show you get this installed on your computer just like you did VS Code or Visual Studio. Download node.js, and there will be a page you can go to, and you'll want to pick most likely like the MSI probably for Windows if you're 64-bit or 32-bit, and we can show you how to figure that out if you don't know, but get the right version, install it. When you get it installed, you will be able, when you drop to the command prompts, to just type node, and boom, it'll tell you. Or I should have even typed, let me type .exit there. I should have typed like node -- version. There's one of those weird parameter things I was telling you about. And it's telling me, hey, you're version 12.13.0. So get that on your computer, and you'll be ready for some other things that are going to happen with JavaScript and applications and running on the web server and stuff like that. So a couple loose ends. We clicked that button, as you saw, and when we clicked our, what was it, a go button, our web page changed there, we talked about. And there's a term called document object model, the DOM, in a web page. Now we cheated here the way we changed that DOM by just using inner HTML, but you might study up on the DOM a little bit, and you'll learn more about it as we get into programming. But when you're adding and taking away things from these pages, it's really an object, and we'll learn about objects in programming, but your web page, or the way it's rendered by browsers, is treating things like objects. And this object model, the document object model, and we change things. When we said this div add this inner HTML, it's adding like a text module or object to that page. The DOM is changing. So that was one loose end I just wanted to mention. You might look at DOM and document object model. The other thing I quickly did in there was, you can use Q to quit over here on your IS Express, but I said I was going to break it. And if you're not from the old days, you can usually hit Control-C or the Control Break key and break out of things. So there, my Control-C told me to use the Q, but my Control Break actually broke out of it. So that's probably old man terms again of breaking out of programs and things like that. Well, we covered a lot. There wasn't a real big order of things, but just some fundamental pieces of getting set up, some tools you might be using, and we will continue on and start building some things and learning how to make programs. I hope it was beneficial.